two versions of his basic ideas, such as cooperation and multi-centralities. So the two layers. One, a cooperation, roughly speaking, among Asia. And Miki tried to find some common ground of our shared values, such as nothingness, nature, heaven. Okay, still, but not simply unified Asians. So many polarizations here. That's one ground, one level. The other, he tried to contrast West and East in many philosophical ways. And of course, he should think about cooperation between Asia and Europe, and Asia and other parts of the world. And but in this case, he tried to make contrast Asia and Europe. That is one of his basic philosophical orientations. So there should be two sorts of cooperation. One is within Asia, and that has a shared values, shared ideas. And the other cooperation is a cooperation beyond that shared values, and beyond between a sort of a confrontational or contrasting value societies. And I think that's sort of two layers or tensions between one single word, cooperation. Cooperation within shared value societies, cooperation sort of between different values. So can you see the same sort of a potential tension in Miki's idea, or you can find some sort of Miki's maneuver to modify his potential tension?
So I agree with you. I think there's both, even within the Asian cooperative, sometimes he emphasized their unity, but he also simultaneously liked to emphasize how the uniqueness of each distinct culture or people need to be recognized. And as far as emphasizing the contrast between Asia and Europe, I think that's because of what was happening with the World War, right? And from the perspective of the Japanese state, which they also used as a kind of propaganda, but it was Anglo-American imperialism coming into China, and so in order to argue for cooperation with the Chinese, he had to emphasize this unity, common values with the Chinese that's contrasted to the Western world. And also he was reacting to the Western intellectual vision of history that equated world history, sekaishi, with European history. And he was saying now is the time for there's other histories in other regions of the world that are important, that can also contribute to world history. So at least I think that was due to the context of the time. He had to emphasize this confrontation between Asia and Europe. The problem is that from our perspective today, this leads to a kind of Orientalism, saying that Orient is this and Occident is that, and they're never going to meet. I think today we're in a much more sophisticated situation that we would be able to transcend that kind of distinction. Although I would have to say that Miki himself said that eventually, after Asia is unified, eventually we can work for the unification of the world, where everybody can cooperate, both East and West. Maybe he didn't emphasize that enough because of the context of the war. But I think today, at least, if we're going to look at Miki's ideas and try to retrieve something that may be useful for us today, we would have to overcome that kind of Orientalism or simplistic dichotomization of the world, right, between East and West. We would also have to acknowledge the South, the countries in the South too, as opposed to the North, and then acknowledge the great diversity of cultures